delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to reopen the day 2 of the organizational session of the open-ended working group on the prevention of an arms race in outer space in all of its aspects, which was established by General Assembly pursuant to the decision 79/512 adopted on the 2nd of December 2024. In keeping with our deliberations yesterday, we remain on agenda item 2 of the provisional agenda entitled Election of Officers. And in this sense, taking up from where we left things yesterday, I would like to open the floor to colleagues to see if there are any updates on those deliberations. Yes, I see the delegate of Venezuela. Please, you have the floor.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your understanding. I'd like to inform you that in order to be able to move forward on substantive issues that are of particular interest to my delegations, Venezuela is in a position not to oppose the consensus in connection with the candidacy presented by the presidency. And we'd like to say that in the records of the meeting to reflect the need to ensure that the presidency is going to start and end at the end of the year.
Intervention, and I see no other requests from the floor, so may I therefore take it that it is the wish of this working group to elect His Excellency Mr. Carlos Forradori of Argentina as its chair for 2025. It is so decided. Brazil. Please, Brazil, you have the floor.
I'd like to congratulate the representative of the sister republic of Argentina, and that Brazil is very happy that we could reach an agreement. And I wish all the success to our Argentinian brother, and tell him that the Brazilian delegation is 100% of his disposal on his work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. The delegate of Egypt, please, you have the floor.
Madam Director, it's a very significant moment. We thank the spirit of all the states parties concerned and expressed, and the flexibility expressed by our dear friends from Venezuela, and also the leadership and the spirit of leadership and courageous willing to serve the common cause of the General Assembly in this very sensitive issue by His Excellency, our new chair elected right now. Egypt is very committed to support the chair through this challenging process, yet hopeful. We had a message of hope right now. We need to capitalize on that. The delegation of Egypt here in Geneva, in New York, is at the disposal of the chair, is willing to support. Like always, as we have been engaging with our dear brothers in the core group through this process from the beginning. It was the view of Egypt and the core group. I'm not speaking here on behalf, but I'm just here highlighting the facts that we look for convergence and we look for common cause. We look for the spirit of the Charter. We look for realistic but balanced and fair approach that avails a platform for engagement that takes into consideration our initial purpose for prevention of arms race in outer space and all its aspects, with all the views there on the table. It's a very significant moment, not only for this open-ended working group, but at a global moment that we need most this kind of initiatives, this kind of courageous leadership to send a signal that multilateralism is still valid. Again, Madam Director, we reaffirm Egypt's support to our new elected chair. Thank you.
I wish to thank the distinguished delegate of Egypt for his intervention. Seeing that no one else is asking for the floor, I also wish to thank all of the delegates for their flexibility. Yes, I see the delegate of Iran. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Coordinator, for giving me the floor, and congratulations to Argentina on the assumption of the chairmanship of this working group. We would like to thank the distinguished delegation of Venezuela for their flexibility in joining the consensus, which is the essential rule of the multilateralism and a guarantee for a balanced, inclusive, comprehensive, and result-oriented discussion. Even though my country abstained from the resolution 79-512, it remains open to any discussion on the prevention of an armed race in outer space and assures the chair of this working group of its constructive cooperation and support. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegate of Iran, for that intervention, and I share your optimism and wish to also thank everyone for their flexibility and for joining consensus. And with this, I also join your voices in congratulating Ambassador Carlos Forradori on his election, and I wish to assure him the full support of the Office for Disarmament Affairs. And it is my pleasure to invite Ambassador Forradori to the podium to assume his position as chair of the working group for 2025. Ambassador Forradori, please come and join us.
Good morning, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends. It is an honor to address you today on a matter of growing urgency, the prevention of arms race in the outer space. At a time when technological advancements are accelerating at the unprecedented pace, we must reaffirm our collective commitment to ensuring that space remains a domain for peaceful cooperation rather than a new frontier for conflict. Space has become integral to our daily lives, underpinning everything from communication and navigation to scientific exploration and climate monitoring. However, as space technology evolves, so too do the risk of its militarization. The weaponization of outer space threatens global stability, erodes trust among nations, and jeopardizes the peaceful use of space for all humankind. If left unchecked, an arms race in space could have catastrophic consequences, not only for international security, but for the very future of space exploration itself. This is why we must work together. The challenges we face in preventing an arms race in space are not the burden of any single nation, but a shared responsibility of the entire international community. Diplomatic dialogue and multilateral cooperation are our most effective tools to ensure that space remains a realm of peace and progress. Let us be clear, the choices we make today will shape the future of the outer space for generations to come. I'm a dreamer, but I'm not naive. The global tensions exist, but I also think that must exist, I believe, the honest intention on solving urgent problems that affect everyone. Let us reaffirm our commitment to a future where space unites us rather than divides us, a future where cooperation prevails over competition, and where we, as responsible members of the international community, ensure that outer space remains a common good for all humankind. Now I want to turn for a few minutes, or probably seconds in Spanish. Quiero especialmente
I would like to especially thank each and every one of you over the last several days, since the day my candidacy was presented. I felt not just a lot of support, that is indeed necessary for someone who is occupying such a sensitive post. But also, in addition to support, I showed very sincere demonstrations and honest demonstrations of care, in addition to the support that was expressed by many of you. And I would like to especially thank those that perhaps had some doubts or perhaps had some problems. And I'd like to thank you because when we need to think and reflect about something, these are not 1,000 square meters that are surrounded by reality. Indeed, tensions do exist, problems do exist between countries, and sometimes these problems do not exist between countries, but between leaders. But we should move away from that and focus on our objective. It is not something that is an issue of today. It is much broader. We must think about the future. Tensions will disappear, but future generations will remain. So I think all of us should always think about that, not just about the current circumstances, the current situation, but think about the future. And I said earlier, not just because, we are dreamers, but we're not naive. But indeed, we should have part of a dream as we move forward to achieve our objectives. So once again, I'd like to thank all of you for your support and for giving me this opportunity to do everything I can to reach our common objective.
Ahora, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let's pass to the agenda item 3, adoption of the agenda. So I would like to turn to item 3 of the provisional agenda for the organizational session, as contained in document AAC 297-2025L1, which was circulated electronically by the Secretariat on Wednesday, 5th February. This document provides the basic framework for the decisions on the organizational matters we will need to take in order to prepare for our substantive work. May I take it that the working group wishes to adopt the provisional agenda for the organizational sessions as contained in document 8AC 297-2025L1. Distinguished delegate from the Russian delegation, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. At the outset, on behalf of our delegation, please allow me to congratulate you on your appointment to the position of Chair of this open-ended working group. We are certain that your skilled leadership will enable the working group set up by General Assembly Decision 79/512 to make a significant contribution to preventing an arms race in outer space. Chair, you know very well that the Russian Federation voted against Decision 79/512. However, in a spirit of a constructive approach, and an effort to find new practical steps in order to achieve the task of preventing an arms race in outer space. Our delegation has taken the decision to participate in this working group and to ensure the utmost substantive practical contribution to the work of this group, to do its utmost to ensure that in a spirit of compromise, the group will be able to reach something that suits all member states of the UN, including for spacefaring nations, to achieve conclusions and recommendations which in the future will enable the prevention of an arms race in outer space. And in this context, we fully support the assessments that were given in your statement. We share your intention to find concrete practical steps to prevent an arms race in outer space, maintaining space as a peaceful arena for cooperation and research, access to which would be ensured for all member states of the United Nations, to ensure that this space does not become an arena for military conflict or the placement of weapons, the use or threat of force. These are the goals which are for us in this working group. And this is why we believe that this working group and its activities must make a practical, applicable contribution. We must have a clear understanding of why we have met here, so as to not become the naive dreamers that you mentioned, distinguished Chair. And to do so, we will need to adopt the relevant decisions on the organization of this working group's work, so as to ensure that it has that practical, applicable nature, to ensure that its work takes into account all of the discussions from the previous 60 years on the topic of space security, which we have, so that we can draw on and make use of the developments, the achievements that member states have and which were achieved in the past 60 years, and to ensure that this group can develop truly valuable and weighty recommendations for the international community, which would ensure the achievement of the goal of preventing an arms race in outer space. In this connection, we believe it is necessary to arrange the agenda in such a way that it can facilitate the consolidation of efforts of the international community to achieve the prevention of an arms race in outer space at a single competent international platform. And this is what we favored. This was the purpose of the Russian-initiated GA resolution 78238, which set up the working group, 283 rather, which gave it a mandate, which would allow it to consider all the aspects and ways of solving the task of preventing an arms race in outer space with clearly set priorities and taking into account the understandings and decisions which were adopted by the international community and the United Nations. And in this regard, we believe that the agenda needs to be more focused in nature. First of all, we believe that the items that are set out in this agenda require some clarification regarding specific issues which will be considered in this regard. In particular, item 5, which is on the general exchange of views. This requires some clarification to ensure that its consideration does not become any duplication of another discussion which is already ongoing, for instance, in the First Committee of the General Assembly, to ensure that we do not duplicate the work of the First Committee. And in this regard, we believe that it is important to include separate sub-items under this item 5, which would deal with the concrete aspects, general aspects, and we propose a discussion that we propose under the discussion of this agenda item. Here, of course, a reliable pillar in order to determine these sub-items and, more generally, for the organization and coordination of the group's work, we could draw on and should draw on the report of the governmental group of experts, which was set up by resolution 77 to 50, and its report, which was adopted last year by consensus by all of the experts who took part in that group. And therefore, it is entirely logical that among the sub-items we should include the evolving nature of space activities, threats, and related capabilities. In addition, as a sub-item, under item 5 of the agenda, we need to set out the effective normative and legal framework, the one in effect, and also as a separate sub-item, we should include approaches to further measures for the prevention of an arms race in outer space. This is in line with the considerations that were circulated in the program of work, the timetable for activities for the group, and furthermore, would be fully in keeping with the activities carried out in the governmental group of experts. Furthermore, there is clarification needed to item 6 of the agenda. It also is quite general and, in our view, could easily facilitate a general exchange of views on several issues. And in this case, we would be losing the practical applicable work that we need to engage in this group. In this regard, we believe that we also need to provide for separate sub-items under this agenda item. And, of course, as a first sub-item, we need to indicate the main priorities of the international community, which are enshrined in many documents of the UN General Assembly. I am referring to the work, the consideration and development of recommendations regarding substantive elements of a legally binding instrument for the prevention of an arms race in outer space, including in particular the prevention of placement of weapons in outer space. This sub-item corresponds to the recommendations of the governmental group of experts, which were clearly set out in its report regarding further work on these substantive elements, and this is in keeping with the aspirations of the international community. That said, we understand that aside from these goals and these priorities, there are also other issues and initiatives in the context of prevention of an arms race in outer space, which do appear to need discussion within the framework of this group. And in this regard, we are not opposed to the inclusion of a sub-item under item 6 of our agenda, which could cover the consideration of different aspects of prevention of an arms race in outer space in the context of an international legally binding instrument for the prevention of an arms race in outer space. We believe that these additions will enable us to focus our work, to channel it towards specific issues, and would ensure effectiveness in the group's work, so that we can achieve concrete conclusions and recommendations to solve the goals and aspects of the prevention of an arms race in outer space that we have before us and which have been determined by the international community, so that we could take the baton from the GGE set up by Resolution 77-250, which adopted a report by consensus last year, implementing the recommendations that it gave, and would create an opportunity for discussion of the various aspects relating to achieving this goal, which would make a tangible contribution and allow serious flexibility in the context of discussions in this group, and would allow delegations to raise any issues that they may wish to raise as part of this dialogue format. Thank you very much, distinguished Chair. We look forward to constructive consideration of these proposals.
Thank you to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation for your remarks and for your different views about this document, but I want to call the attention to the members that we are at this point in time analyzing the document which I refer originally, the AAC 297-2025L1, which is the provisional agenda. So if we at this point could actually focus in analyzing this provisional agenda, and if is any other member who wants to speak, or we can consider with these clarifications that I may take that the working group is ready to adopt the provisional agenda for the organizational session as contained in document AAC 297-2025L1. So decided. The provisional agenda is being approved. I now intend to turn to organizational matters related to our substantive sessions in 2025, starting with the agenda for the substantive session before moving to the other items. Agenda item 4, entitled Agenda for the Substantive Sessions. I draw your attention to the draft agenda of the substantive sessions of the working group as contained in document AAC 297-2025 CRP1, which was circulated by the Secretariat on February the 5th, 2025. The draft agenda aims to be as simple as possible in its constructions and contains the minimal necessary elements to provide a structure to our work. Once adopted, it could serve as the agenda for all 4 years of this working group, providing maximum flexibility as to how we organize each session of our work. As you can see, items 1 to 4 include basic organizational matters, including item 1, opening the session, elections officers, item 3, adoption of the agenda, and item 4, organization of work. Item 6 is drawn directly for the operative paragraph 3 of General Assembly Decision 79512 and spells out the mandate given to us by the General Assembly. The simple reflection of our mandate should provide us with the maximum flexibility and inclusiveness in our substantive work. Item 7 provides for the considerations and adoptions of our final report to the 83rd session of the General Assembly. I hope that all the delegations will see merit in this practical and pragmatic approach. May I take it that the working group wishes to adopt the draft agenda for its substantive sessions as contained in document AAC 297-2025 CRP1. The distinguished representative of the Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Спасибо, уважаемый господин.
Thank you very much, Chair. We would like to refer to the proposals that we made in our previous statement. They related to this very draft agenda, and we would like to propose that we consider these proposals for the draft agenda before us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, this distinguished representative of Russian Federation. My distinguished representative of Cuba, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, embajador.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Good morning, colleagues. And naturally, the delegation of Cuba would like to wish you full success as you guide our discussions on this very important issue. And of course, you can count on the support, always constructive support, of the Cuban delegation to help you fulfill your mandate. I confess that I did not have the time to take note of the proposals that were made by the distinguished Russian delegation. And indeed, it would be good to have those proposals in writing so that we could make some relevant comments. As far as Cuba is concerned, we would like to make a couple of suggestions related to the language of the agenda that we find in document CRP 1. More specifically, I have a suggestion for paragraph 6 and for paragraph 7, the draft agenda. The speaker corrects himself. I have proposals for agenda items 5 and 6. On agenda item 5, general exchange of views, I think it would be good to be a bit more precise in order to reflect what we really want to see in this general exchange of views. Because very often such a general exchange of views is somewhat a waste of time because we do not talk about specific things and delegations talk about various things. I think we should have a more focused agenda item here, and I suggest that we add here in agenda item 5, I'll read it out in English.
Exchange of views to add on legally binding, non-legally binding, and other measures on the prevention of an arms race in outer space in all its aspects. So please allow, Ambassador, allow me to read again my suggestion regarding point 5 of the draft agenda. According to our proposal, the new language of point 5 would read as follows: general exchange of views on legally binding, non-legally binding, and other measures on the prevention of an arms race in outer space in all its aspects. Mi segunda propuesta, en este caso.
My second proposal concerns paragraph 6, and it will be to add at the end of the agenda item 6, I read it.
Including on a legally binding instrument. Therefore, item 6 would read with our proposal as follows, and I'm going to read it in English. Recommendations on the prevention of an arms race in outer space in all its aspects, comma, including on a legally binding instrument. Creo que con estas propuestas
I think that these proposals make the draft agenda much clearer, and I do hope that this will help us have more focused discussions that are results-oriented. So I would like to ask delegations to consider these proposals made by the delegation of Cuba. Thank you. Thank you very much. To the distinguished colleague and representative of Cuba,
Entiendo que la
I now see the delegation of Austria.
representative of Austria, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, and at the outset, we want to congratulate you for the assumption of your duties now on our second day, and also assure you of Austria's full support in the task ahead. We will save our words for the importance of this working group for the next substantial meeting, and just will go straight away into the organizational questions, which are extremely important, of course, as well. On the discussion at hand on a draft agenda, I just wanted to point out and maybe also ask for clarification from the Secretariat about the usual practice on how the agendas are drafted and kind of also presented to delegations. We are talking here now about CRP1. And if you look into previous documents that are of a similar nature from the previous OEWG on reducing space threats, but also on the practice that was used in the GG on PAROS, there was usually a very short draft agenda which had a general point of view, maybe a general exchange of views, not always necessarily, but there was usually one agenda point that covered the substance of the first committee resolution that created the body that we were talking about. And I see that you have also been following this kind of practice to make one agenda point that grasps more or less the purpose of the whole resolution and the whole OEWG, and then the respective sub-agenda items have usually been spelled out in an indicative timetable. And this has been, as I said, the practice for both the GG PAROS and the OEWG on reducing space threats. I see that your proposal also followed this logic, and we would have been okay with this kind of approach, which is simple and also gives us a little bit more flexibility to talk about the detailed substance in the indicative timetable. And here we are very open to discuss the proposal that can be found in CRP2. We are also open to some of the suggestions we already heard by the Cuban and the Russian delegation. But the fundamental question, I think, is do we want to have this as sub-agenda items in the draft agenda in CRP1, or do we follow the previous practice of having an indicative timetable and having all the detailed substance in this, also already with some allocation of time slots, which of course, when we have a long list of topics, is also quite important how much time and in which order we give to these different agenda items. On the substance, we will talk again later, but something that is important to us is that several of the agenda items that can be found in the resolutions should also be, of course, be considered, and we will come to this later on when we clear this first question about which document should set out the different sub-agenda items that we should be discussing. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Austria. My colleague and distinguished representative of China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you.
本次开放式工作组的主席，我们
I'd like to thank you, Chair, and just like other delegations, we are ready to provide you with all of our support. At the same time, we'd like to avail ourselves of this opportunity to thank the Secretariat for the considerable efforts put into the preparation of this meeting, and I also like to thank the delegation of Venezuela and other delegations for their flexibility. We have already considered the indicative timetable for substantive sessions for 2025, a document that was circulated by the Secretariat on the 5th of February. And we also listened with great interest to the statement made by the delegation of Russia and other delegations, and we'll be studying those proposals carefully. The establishment of this working group, specifically Decision 79-512, we abstained during the vote, but for the entire process of arms control in outer space, and on the question of Paris, the delegation of China is ready to discuss these issues with other delegations to reach a project that can be acceptable to all. Just now, as we talk about the agenda and as we discuss the agenda, we have already noted that there are some differences in opinion on the different items, especially the work of the working group on Paris and the working group on rules. And the principle of China in this work is that we believe that the working group should work in such a way as to reflect the traditional consensus of the international community on Paris. In other words, to promote the final objective to be able to reach a legally binding instrument on Paris. We must try to work towards reaching such a legally binding instrument in order to, in the end, to prevent an arms race in outer space. And we have to work on the basis of the consensus results made by the working group and make substantive contributions to our discussions. And in terms of this process of discussions, every delegation can be involved in consultations that will help us reach a decision that will be acceptable to everyone. I'm referring to questions of the timetable, the agenda, and other arrangements. On the draft agenda, China can support the views expressed by Russia and Cuba, and we also believe that the work of this working group should focus on efforts to achieve a legally binding instrument on space issues, and we also share the opinion of Austria. We can try to work on the different facets of the agenda in order to highlight the most important points. Now, on the details of the agenda items, we're ready to discuss all of these matters with other delegations at a later stage. Also, I have a question related to the approaches adopted in other meetings, and as far as the agenda concerned, we have to take into account not just of the timetable, but we should think about other points, and this way we can have a better understanding of the details of this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of China. And at this point, I would like to make some clarifications. And I fully agree with what just mentioned the distinguished representative of Cuba, because obviously we need a lot of clarifications in this draft agenda. They are a very generic titles. But at the same time, we must take into account that this is a very sensitive issue that should be taken step by step. And consequently, I think that we have to build this building all together from the bottom up. And my suggestion is that we must take into account that the fact that we already have this meeting in place and we are start working and we start the engine and we are moving on, I think it's a good start, and we should be flexible enough to consider the different views, which I really appreciate, and I want to be extremely objective as much as I can to take into consideration every single suggestion and every single idea, because it's really very important. But my suggestion is, when the time comes, I commit myself within the framework of this draft agenda to address these specific issues. And the very first thing, when the time comes, for example, and we have to address the general exchange of views, that the distinguished representative of Cuba said clearly that is very ambiguous, the very first thing is to fill with content of this specific item, so that it's not going to be confusion when we start talking about what are we talking about, and not just talking about an ambiguous matters. But my suggestion is that at this point in time, if we could please be flexible enough to consider this draft agenda, because based upon the approval of this draft agenda, we will start moving on. So this is my suggestion at the moment, without taking very seriously in consideration everything that is being said here, because everything has to be specifically analyzed and studied. And also wants to point out the positive will and specifically from the Russian Federation and from China, because we are clearly on talking about all the other countries that actually support the creation of this working group, that still they are here and cooperating and collaborating and giving the ideas. So, but based upon all these discussions, I think that probably it could be, as I said, if we can count on your flexibility to move the second step, the small step forward, trying to consider this draft agenda as it is, with the commitment that the very first thing that we must do in addressing every single item is to fill up with the content, these titles, and we know exactly what we're talking about in each moment and case. And thank you. And now I give you the floor to the distinguished representative of the UK. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. Firstly, let me warmly congratulate you on your assumption of the chairmanship of this UN open-ended working group. We very welcome this very much. I'll just be brief with my comments. I very much support the approach that you have just outlined in your comments. We support the agenda as set out in CRP1. As you have rightly pointed out, this just sets out a generic set of headings which we can flesh out with more content as we move forward together with this important process. As other delegations, the distinguished delegates from Russia and Cuba have said, of course there will be more a need to discuss more detailed and specific topics under these agenda items, and I very much agree that we need to discuss the evolving threat picture in outer space, as the distinguished colleague from Russia has proposed, as well as the existing legal framework, not simply what exists, but how it might apply, and a number of other important issues that we can go into the detail of. But this is a great first step. We have an agenda that we can build on and move forward together. So thank you very much for your efforts this far, and we support that. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. Distinguished representative of Pakistan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to join others at the outset in congratulating you on assumption of these important duties and assure you of our full support in the discharge of your work. We would also thank for the flexibility demonstrated by all delegations so that we can get into the substantive aspect of how to organize the work of this. Mr. Chair, my delegation had also abstained on the draft decision 79512 that had established this open-ended working group, and primarily not because we had concerns on the substance of the decision, but we strongly believed that the polarizations and the divisions that exist in the outer space agenda they need the rule and the principle of consensus to be adhered to in a very scrupulous manner. And we were glad to note that in the draft decision, of course, it's very clearly written that we have to conduct our work through consensus. And the purpose of this organizational session, from how we see it, is to discuss all these aspects which we are now getting into on how to organize the work, how to take on board all the proposals, all the different preferences that can come from different states. As far as we are concerned, we believe that the primary focus of our work in this open-ended working group should be to advance progress towards the goal of a legally binding instrument. And that should be our primary focus. And given the fact that we have been able to, notwithstanding all the polarizations and divisions on our agenda, we have been able to get recent agreements in the context of GGE on Paris. So it really reflects the importance of building on those common agreements that we have achieved in recent past. In terms of the agenda and the document that we are considering, CRP1, I'd like to seek clarification either through you, to the Secretariat, regarding the document in which the topics are listed, which you haven't, of course, right now drawn our attention to. So our understanding is that CRP2, which mentions topics, will be taken up under the agenda item, organization of the work of the substantive session. We also have views on how those topics are listed, and we have some comments and proposals on that as well. And our understanding is that that indicative timetable, which includes the topics, will also need to be adopted by consensus. As far as we are concerned, we remain flexible in terms of whether we need to have that conversation in the framework of CRP1 or CRP2. But it's important that we have that conversation at some stage, and we take the decision after looking at the proposals which have come forward from different delegations as well. And we would be happy to highlight those proposals which we have once you invite us to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished colleague and representative of Pakistan. Distinguished representative of Germany, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and let me start by congratulating you for for your assuming this vital role as chair of our open-ended working group, and like other delegations before me, I would like to assure you of the full support of my delegation, and we stand ready to support you and serve you in whatever way you may deem appropriate. Mr. Chair, so My delegation assumed that this OEWG truly holds the potential to shape the way forwards and granting us a chance to engage in an inclusive and comprehensive dialogue on the various aspects of outer space security. Coming to the issue at hand, CRP1, we very much support your approach you have just outlined to stick to a draft agenda which will give us the necessary flexibility to address all the relevant issues which we have to discuss during our deliberations in this group. I also have carefully listened to the interventions of our colleagues from the Russian Federation, Cuba, China, and also Pakistan right now, and I agree very much that we have certainly to be more specific in our deliberations, and that we have to flesh out a little bit what we have here before us. However, as my Austrian colleague, I see much of these points already reflected in the document CRP2, which is the indicative timetable, and I think that this is the place where we should discuss it, and we are certainly ready to also to discuss this sub items which are all reflected there in the course of our deliberations. There's one thing which I think is important. Indeed, we should not duplicate discussions in other fora or discussions we already had. In the view of my delegation, it's the resolution 79-512 establishing this open-ended working group, which is the basis for our future work. My delegation voted together with 173 delegations in favor of this resolution, and I think the resolution is a very carefully drafted text, and we should refrain from starting here in this open-ended working group to renegotiate this carefully drafted text, which, by the way, contains already very specific points when it comes to decision-making, agenda, or participation in our work. To conclude, we are very much in favor to support the draft agenda you've been putting before us, and we stand ready to exchange and to discuss, to specify further in the context of our discussions the issues we would like to address in this working group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Germany. I agree with that, and I think that in the dynamic of the functioning of and the working of this working group, I think that it is really very important to take into account that my intention is not going back, but going to the future. And secondly, I think that we have to build up upon all the base that we already have, because it's been invested by many countries a lot of hours, a lot of days, a lot of years on this matter. And the idea is to move forward and to keep constructing and not like repeating what is being said. So I think that based upon the fact that it is necessary to contribute and cooperate among us on this matter altogether with the very same objective, because what I can see here is that we have the same objective, but we have different strategies. And we had to work on the strategies. And also want to reiterate that I'm very much aware of the generic terms in this draft agenda. I'm very conscious of that. But I don't want to waste the time. I mean, I really want to go focus on specific issues. And that's why I was saying that my idea is on step by step, in every case, in every item, the very first thing that we must do is to define what's going to be the scope of our discussions. Now I give the floor to distinguished representative of Norway. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start by thanking you and Argentina for assuming the role of the chair. You can count on Norway's full support and constructive engagement in this OEWG. We can support the agenda as is, and will also support your approach, just outlined. To us, this looks like quite a standard agenda, similar to other agendas that usually guide such working groups or expert meetings. It is our view, as already mentioned by other delegations, that it is the indicative timetable and program of work that normally lay out the specific topics for the substantive discussions, and this is where we can ensure references to particular topics and have discussions on this. We all know that there are differences in opinion about how to approach the issue of PAROS, which is exactly the reason why we are gathered here to find solutions and compromises. And that's why we believe that the agenda should remain quite general, without highlighting some aspects and not others, which in our opinion are questions that can be considered in the discussions on the indicative timetable and program of work. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give the floor to the distinguished representative of New Zealand. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, including for putting yourself forward to chair our group this year. We look forward to working with you and all the states in this room towards a successful outcome. New Zealand welcomes further progress at the United Nations to address outer space security, and we welcome this group getting underway. In this regard, we commend the pen holders of Decision 79/512 for their contribution. Space security is an issue that touches all states on Earth, including in New Zealand's home region, the South Pacific. The Pacific is a remote region of the world which heavily relies on space-based infrastructure for communication, navigation, disaster relief, and to support livelihoods. Our Pacific region's continued security and prosperity is closely linked with safeguarding outer space security. As many of us have reiterated over the years, there is a real and pressing need to address threats of conflict in outer space, such that it is preserved for the benefit of humanity now and into the future. Measures to address these threats, whether legally binding or normative, must reflect the nature of the space environment, including the wide range of potential threats that exist to space systems. Since 2019, we have been encouraged by a growing sense of international momentum and some convergence that has emerged in international discussions around how we understand those threats and how we respond to them. We hope and trust this to endure over the course of this group's work. These discussions will be critical to building new norms of behaviour, which, if supported widely enough, could be codified into new law. There are a range of good ideas circulating for what we discuss this year and how we achieve that. You can count on my delegation chair to continue supporting the further elaboration of norms and rules to secure the outer space environment. New Zealand is a space launching state and is willing to do its part to ensure the space environment is kept safe, secure and sustainable, and that it can enhance security in our region. In that regard, we support the breadth of topics you have suggested in both conference room papers and the flexibility you are suggesting we bring to those discussions. We believe this group should keep an open mind about the topics that could be addressed in our work, drawing on the widest pool of resources and expertise. One benefit of being able to work in an open-ended working group format is that the full range of UN member states can be represented, and they are able to raise their unique concerns and perspectives as they relate to outer space security. We consider this working modality to be a strength and expect these full range of perspectives can be incorporated into our exchanges this year in an inclusive manner. We are pleased to be considering these issues once more, and we look forward to working with everybody in this room over the course of 2025 and the full span of this working group. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of New Zealand. I'll give the floor to the distinguished representative of Brazil. Dear colleague, you have the floor.
Chair, once more I would like to congratulate you, and I would say that we support your approach, and I would just highlight something that you just said. In this room, we may have different strategies, but our goal is the same. So let's follow your approach of step by step. Thank you.
Obrigado. Distinguished representative of Brazil. Now they have the floor to the distinguished representative of France.
Thank you very much, Chair. At the outset, I would like to congratulate you on assuming the chairmanship of this group. I also thank the Secretariat for all of its efforts to achieve these results and all of the delegations for their flexibility. France has actively supported the merger of the two groups as this topic is of paramount importance. That is, maintaining a safe, secure and sustainable peace environment, and we thank Egypt and Brazil and all of the core group for this merger, which played an important role. You have proposed an approach to us, which we fully support. We have already seen some major strides forwards this morning, and therefore we must continue to make progress gradually. And we are fully in favor of approving your agenda in document CRP1, which is in keeping with standard practice and exchange of views, as you said, which are not detailed and can be clarified in the timetable. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of France. Distinguished representative of Sweden, you have the floor.
Chair, and thank you for assuming the chair as well. You can rest assured that Sweden will do its utmost to support you in your efforts. I would also like to add my voice to those in favor for the suggested agenda in CRP1. As many have stated, more details could be hashed out in the CRP2 when it comes to specific topics. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Sweden. I want to point out the following thing, and distinguished representative of Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor, and congratulations once again on your assumption. We believe that discussions on a legally binding instruments is an undeniable part of the aspects of any discussion on Paros, supported by many delegations who voted in favor of resolution 78/238 and voted against or abstained from the resolution 78/20. Consequently, it is very important for my delegation, Mr. Chair, to rest assured that we in this working group allocate adequate time to the discussions on a legally binding instrument as well. I thank you.
Thank you so much, and give the floor to distinguished representative of Turkey.
Mr. Chair, first of all, we would like to congratulate you on assuming the chairmanship of the open-ended working group on the prevention of arms race in outer space in all its aspects. You can count on our delegation's support in your endeavors. Mr. Chair, the international community is seriously concerned about the possibility of an arms race in space. Turkey attaches particular attention both to the prevention of arms race in space and the protection of the rights of unrestricted access to and long-term use of outer space for the benefit and welfare of all countries. While we are in favor of internationally legally binding instruments in principle, we are cognizant that, considering the current state of play in international affairs, the establishment of a legal basis doesn't seem to be likely in the near future. On the other hand, this shouldn't hinder us from working towards the development of a peaceful and stable space domain. While we are seeking to determine possible elements of a future legally binding instrument, we can continue together to develop a shared understanding of norms, rules, and principles of responsible behaviors and confidence-building measures, which is essential to provide transparency and increase trust and international cooperation in outer space. In this regard, we welcomed a merger General Assembly Resolution 79-51-2, which replaced the two open-ended working groups established by resolutions 78-20 and 78-238. We have the opportunity to discuss collectively all aspects of Paris in a holistic approach. Our work in the open-ended working group could also pave the way for a future legally binding instrument in this field, recognizing that any possible substantive outcome in this open-ended working group is crucial in this regard. We call on all parties to show flexibility as much as possible. We wish to see a full range of views and issues of concern are duly reflected in the agenda and work plan of the open-ended working group. We believe the draft indicative timetable of the 2025 substantive sessions can form a reasonable basis for our work. For sum up, Chair, we are right now supporting your way of approach. We should behave step-by-step approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, the distinguished representative of Turkey, and I want to clarify a couple of questions. First of all, I really take the concern of the distinguished representative of Iran. Of course, we are going to address all the issues here. This is exactly our commitment, and this is exactly our task. I mean, we really have to pay attention and take care and consider all views. And this is exactly the reason of and the essence of this working group. And the other thing I wanted to indicate is the following. As I said, I really fully agree that the titles of this draft agenda are not including many concerns, and it is not very much explicit in detail, as the distinguished colleague and representative of Cuba first said at the beginning of the session. And I fully agree with that. And as I said before, and that's why I'm saying that I commit myself to every time that we're going to address every item, we have to, first of all, analyze what is going to be the discussion. So, but at this point in time, many of you, even now in this session, said, well, that I can count with your support. Well, the time comes. And I think that I need your support in order to move forward. And with this that I've been said in terms of my commitment to analyze in depth every single item, and when the time comes that we have to analyze them. But if that's, at this point in time, we could actually consider this draft agenda as it is, I would really appreciate the flexibility of all of you in order to move forward, and make the second step on the objective that is actually motivating our task today. The Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. We are grateful to colleagues from other delegations for setting us their thoughts, for the assessments given regarding the draft agenda. From what we have heard in these statements, it seems to us that a key question is not which specific document we are discussing right now, the agenda or the program of work. The key question is, what specifically will we be discussing as part of this working group? How will the work be organized in terms of the specific issues that the group will be addressing? The effectiveness of our work will depend on this, and upon this will depend the results that we will achieve, the goals that we set ourselves, and which concrete recommendations the group will develop to ensure that the group doesn't discuss everything all at once and at the same time nothing at all. In this regard, we believe that we could merge the discussion on the program of work, which is in CRP2, and the draft agenda, because they are interrelated, and we could focus specifically on which exact topics and issues we are going to discuss. Because without one of these, we will hardly be able to adopt a decision on a broader agenda. At this juncture, it is not entirely clear to our delegation what exactly we plan to discuss under items 5 and 6, and we believe that this is what we should direct our attention towards right now. The proposal that we made earlier, which is on fleshing out these two items, remains relevant, and we would request that these considerations that we put forward be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. Distinguished representative of Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And like other delegations, our delegation would like to congratulate you and for taking on this important task. And we are thankful to you for stepping forward to do this. We support what the Russian delegation said about discussing this only once. So from our point of view, we would welcome adopting CRP1 and then moving, when we discuss the timetable, into discussing the specific items for the working group so that we don't have to discuss these topics that we want to analyze for both of these documents. So we fully support what you propose, Mr. Chairman, and we are grateful to those delegations that have brought us to this point where we can finally engage in this working group. That, of course, starts with the efforts undertaken to merge the two resolutions at the last ANGA session, and we hope that we can move forward productively also here. It has been a difficult road, but there is hope to move forward, and we are very grateful to you for facilitating this process. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Canada. Representative of Austria, you have the floor.
Very much. And also from our point of view, we are eager to start a discussion on the substantive agenda items and how to organize them. As I mentioned before, I mean, this could be done in the program of work or indicative timetable. However, we set this out, but we can start this discussion already now. And with your indulgence, I think I would start right away and share some of the views from our point of view on the agenda, but also the program of work for both documents, CRP1 and CRP2. If this is the way you would, because we are under your guidance here, and so far we are on discussion only of CRP1, but if with your indulgence, I would just start sharing our thoughts on both of the documents. Is this okay, Chair?
Of course, I mean, I deeply respect your views, and I think it is really very important. The thing is that it's a matter of timing. I think that it would be more if we could focus in one document, so that going step by step. Because I mean, I also have a lot of considerations about many things here that I could really would like to express, but I think that it could be better if we can focus in one document, and then we pass to the second one or the following one, because I mean, there are a lot of substantial discussions about many of these issues. And I think that with the flexibility of all of you, we can actually focus in one document so that we can actually consolidate on solid basis what is coming after that with the deepest respect. I think that it is really very important to go step by step. And I really agree with the distinguished delegate from the Russian Federation in terms that it could be really ideal to add some other specific subtitles or whatever to these generic titles, which I admit is very generic. But I mean, as I said, let's go moving step by step. And I said how many times, I commit myself to analyze before any item comes what's going to be the content of each one of them, because otherwise we will end in a infinite discussions about many specific issues at this point in time. And I think that we should actually concentrate our attention and reflection on these titles that are generic, but at the same time give us all the options to discuss all the sensitive issues that implies each one of them. And one thing that I want to let you know as well is that I'm completely open to have any kind of informal discussions with each one of you directly. I mean, all those who don't have my WhatsApp, I can give it to you, and I'm completely open before the time comes, so that in every session we are going to consolidate every item without any doubt that all the different ideas will be included and will be discussed. But I think that at this point it is important to move on together step by step, considering the draft agenda as it is, and then continue with the discussions when the time comes in each item, one by one. And thank you. You can continue, please, distinguished representative of Austria.
We can support it, and we can just adopt CRP1 with the generic provisions as it sets out and continue the discussion under CRP2. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Austria, and thank you for your flexibility. And now give the floor to my colleague and distinguished representative of Cuba.
Muchas gracias, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. As I said earlier, the delegation of Cuba intends to participate actively and constructively in this process with a view of achieving the necessary levels of consensus. And this is why we listened with great attention to the exchange of views that took place on CRP1 with the draft agenda. Chair, our concern is that to have an agenda that is presented in such general and vague terms will lead to discussions that are not very productive. There will be no focused discussion, and we're sincere in our concern. And we believe, Chair, that the issue we're discussing now is not something new. We've been discussing this for years in the First Committee of the UNGA, in the Disarmament Commission, in the Conference on Disarmament, in the special sessions of the UN General Assembly on disarmament. And we have learned a lot as a result of those discussions with knowledge and experience. So this already exists, but we believe that the draft agenda that is being presented to us is something that is meant for a group that is starting from scratch. And we have many elements already. And having said that, and I'm saying this with an interest to contribute to consensus. For the time being, we will not insist on our proposals, especially listening to you, Chair, with your reassurances that you share our views on the need to have more focused discussions. And in the discussion of the timetable of our work, we will discuss in greater detail these issues in line with our hopes. So yes, we listened to the proposal made by the distinguished delegation of the Russian Federation, and I'd like to be clear that Cuba reserves the right to come back to the question of the agenda once we have a better idea where our discussions are going on the indicative timetable that you're proposing in CRP 3. Thank you. Thank you very much, distinguished representative of Cuba. And I really thank you for your statement and for your flexibility, but I'd like to point out the following. I've seen how things are evolving in the room, and my idea is to move forward and not get stuck at some point, and especially avoid going back. So I'm taking very seriously what other colleagues have said, especially what the Russian Federation said. I think that we should address all concerns. That is why we are here. Another thing, I fully realized that this is a theme that has been discussed for many years and that a lot of time has been lost. And I think once and for all, we should try to really achieve progress, and that is my intention. And not simply moving forward on abstract discussions, but to move forward on specific issues. So my idea is that I share fully your views on what we're discussing, and to focus on specific content so that we do not have any futile discussions, and to ensure real progress. My intention, I repeat, is to move forward, and not just for the sake of moving forward, but to have results. So thank you very much. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Belgium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to use this opportunity to congratulate you on your election in this role, and I wish to assure you of my delegation's full support moving forward. We will immediately put that into practice, and we wish to support the approach proposed by you, and Belgium stands ready to adopt the draft agenda outlined in CRP 1. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your statement, and flexibility and support. Give you the floor to distinguished representative of Ireland.
And thank you for taking up this role as chair. We commend you for your efforts here. We also want to thank the core group for their efforts on ultimately delivering this result and getting us to this point. Just want to echo the comments of other delegations regarding the advisability of proceeding with the suggested agenda as outlined in CRP 1. We would support the approach you put forward. It's a deliberately simple, standard agenda that would allow us to proceed with our substantive work without delay. This is not a new approach. It's not a new way of working. So we would stress not reinventing the wheel on this occasion. It's not required. It causes further delays, and complications, which is a serious concern for our delegation because the urgency of the work that we need to undertake. As others have stated, we could further refine as we go about the process in the period ahead, in particular as we discuss CRP2 when these matters will be deliberated on in further detail. So just to thank you again, support your approach, and we hope to proceed in that manner shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished Representative of Ireland, and thank you for your support. Estimado colega de México, tiene la palabra.
Mexico, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Chair. At the outset, my delegation would like to congratulate you on your election, and we support your initial message related to the importance of the work that we're starting to focus on a collaborative and focused approaches to prepare necessary measures to ensure that acts in outer space have a negative impact on the foundational objective of the United Nations to ensure peace and security at the international level. For my delegation, the mandate to deal with the questions related to Paris have to focus on three main things: reiteration of the applicability of existing norms related to the peaceful use of outer space, the identification of principles and rules and consolidate these norms, and combat policies and doctrines that consider outer space as an arena for confrontation, and also develop complementary legally binding measures to prevent an arms race. Mexico voted both for the resolution 77250 and 79512, and we believe that they complement one another, and this is why we support the decision to approve during the previous intersessional periods, and to take the approach to ensure that this working group focus on those objectives. Now, on document CRP1, my delegation understands the concerns that we heard in the room on the need to ensure a balanced vision of our approach. My delegation believes that the very simple nature of the agenda and the way Agenda Item 5 is presented are sufficiently broad to make it possible to ensure such a balance. Obviously, all of this has to be reflected in the work program reflected in CRP2 and also in the subsequent work that we'll be carrying out when we consider different issues. In this respect, my delegation can accept CRP1 as presented to us. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you very much to distinguished colleague and representative of Mexico. I give the floor to distinguished representative of Brazil.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Thank you. I would just like to add a few observations to this debate, which I think which my delegation feels is interesting in terms of how we got here, and specifically to how we reached the mandate that we have in OP2 of the decision that has established this open-ended working group. Colleagues and delegations will recall the efforts that were made by the core group all throughout 2024 to reach an adequate basis for the merger of the two open-ended working groups. Many efforts were made towards identifying in greater detail what should be the substantive basis of our work. In the end, it proved to be the most promising avenue to adopt a generic generic mandate. I'm sorry, and this is owing to the long-standing willingness of the membership to break free from the artificial limitations and divisions that were long plaguing the debate on Paris. My delegation recalls that in 1981, when the first resolutions on Paris were adopted, we already had this issue to deal with. We had two competing resolutions on Paris, each one focusing on one specific dimension of the problem, one on the placement of weapons in outer space and another one on anti-satellite weapons. These debates and divisions have been perhaps the greatest single reason why no progress has been achieved in the years since. And this is why the draft decision that was put forward and eventually adopted establishes the concept of Paris in all its aspects. This is a comprehensive and balanced way to reflect all the competing priorities that we have heard this morning. I would also like to draw attention to the fact that that does not mean that we are starting from scratch. It is a new concept, a new approach, but it's firmly based on previous resolutions of the UNGA. OP2 specifically refers to the most recent ones, 78/238 and 78/20, but not only that, to all the resolutions that the UNGA has adopted ever since. So this is as much clarity as we need to ensure that no perspectives, no priorities will be left behind. But I think that the approach that you're proposing is the best way forward in order to avoid the repetition of these debates that we had last year and the years since. So again, my delegation fully supports your approach, Chair, to start step by step and to build on a solid basis that we could achieve with last year's decision. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much. And I want to let you know that I fully agree with what you just said. And this issue is fascinating. But at the same time, when you take a look at the background information, everything that happened before is very boring because it's repetition and repetition and repetition of different positions and so on and so forth. My intention is moving forward and taking into consideration all concerns on all views, because it is extremely important that we really pay attention, because we must build this all together, and we have a specific and common objective. So I commit myself to analyze in detail every single aspect and take into consideration every single view and every single opinion, every single suggestion. So that's why I'm saying that I really appreciate a lot the flexibility that different delegations had been mentioned recently, because it's a way to work. It's working, moving forward. And obviously, when you see that there are some generic terms and everything, I mean, we know what we're talking about, and we are going to precise the scope of every single item, I promise. So, having said so, I'd like to, with all these clarifications, may I take this working group is ready to adopt the provisional agenda for the organizational sessions contained in the document ACAC 297/2025 L1? Sorry, CRP1. Distinguished representative of Russian delegation, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, distinguished chair. This document, as many delegations have said, including my delegation, requires a clear understanding and deciphering what exactly we'll be discussing under agenda items 5 and 6. Otherwise, if we consider the document as presented to us and the way it's presented to us, the document seems to be a step backwards in comparison to the previous dialogue formats on this issue, because the document provides for a discussion of a general nature, a discussion that will not be focused on resolving specific applied tasks it is not focused on the realization of the priority issues that have been outlined in UN General Assembly resolutions, including, first and foremost, the elaboration of a legally binding instrument related to the prevention of an arms race in outer space, including, in particular, the prevention of the placement of weapons in outer space. This document, the way that it is presented, specifically items 5 and 6, do not directly relate to the recommendations that were made by the GGE last year, namely, to continue to consider substantive elements of a legally binding instrument. This is why we believe, and in light of the comments that were made by other delegations, it would be quite logical to consider this agenda item together with the draft program of work, where we have some additional details related to the specific issues that will be considered by this group, how the discussion of these issues will be organized. Because for my delegation, it will be very difficult to take a decision or adopt a decision on the agenda item until we have clarity about what will specifically be discussed under agenda items 5 and 6. We are in your hands, Chair. If you believe that we will focus only on document CRP1, then we would prefer to continue our discussion of the proposals that our delegation made to this document in order to introduce some amendments and make it a more focused document. But we hear your calls to show greater flexibility, and we're ready to show this flexibility. And that is why, in order to be flexible, we suggest that we look at documents CRP1 and CRP2 together. They are directly interlinked, and they would make it possible for us to ensure a clear final understanding about what this working group will be doing, what specific issues it will be discussing, and how much time will we be devoting to the discussion of the different issues. And we are ready to do that if you find that to be the most appropriate way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. Distinguished representative of Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations on your election, and you have our full support. And also, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the members of the core group for bringing us this far, and we appreciate all the efforts. And we would like to second the original proposal by the chair, moving on with adoption of CRP1, and I would present my reasons. Again, in order to be, for us to have meaningful debate over the next 4 years, we believe that agenda items must not be too prescriptive, and they should be broad enough to encompass the balanced views of all the member states. And by general exchange of views, we take it that the exchange of views will be limited to the work and mandate and objective of the working group. And I think that is the common sense of the practice here. And as far as recommendation, agenda item number 6 is concerned, that is the precise language that was used in the merger decision that was adopted by 173 states last year at the UN First Committee. And I would also concur with the chair that this was formulated in light of the sensitivity of the issue. And I would also like to point out that different member states have different priorities. And we're not
going to negotiate priorities on the agenda items. And I would also be cautious not to link the two agenda items 4 and 5 here of this organizational session. And adoption of agenda for substantive sessions should not be contingent upon adoption of CRP2, which is only an indicative timetable. And we cannot prejudge what the work will be for the next 4 years. And then it should be left for a separate discussion apart from the adoption of the agenda. Now, having said that, if there needs to be further clarity on the agenda, we could perhaps propose for agenda number 6 to add a few words after that, which would now read, recommendations on the prevention of an arms race in outer space in all its aspects, in accordance with operative paragraph 2 of the merger decision. I don't have the number of the document. I think that's as precise as we could get. And then that will allow any delegation to raise issues that are relevant to the mandates of the original working groups, as well as all other UN documents that have been referred to. So I would propose that we move on with the adoption of CRP1 and then discuss about the further details of our work program later on. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Korea, distinguida representante de España.
Spain, you have the floor. Thank you, Chair. At the outset, I'd like to congratulate you, Ambassador, and your team for assuming this very difficult responsibility, and you can count on our support. And I can like to thank other delegations, especially the delegation of Venezuela, for showing flexibility. We have different proposals, comments to make, but it is good to respect the process following the traditional practice. And we support your proposal to go step by step. First, look at the general agenda and then move on to a more specific agenda with specific items. Thank you. Thank you very much to the distinguished representative of Spain. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Japan.
Thank you, Chair, and congratulations, first of all, Ambassador, to take this quite important position of this meeting. And my delegation would like to extend full support to your team. And regarding this draft agenda, my delegation support Chair's step-by-step approaches. So we would like to support this draft agenda as it is, just in front of our delegation. And right after this adoption of this CPR1, let's move on to the discussion on the detail matters. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, distinguished representative of Japan. I see no any other delegation. I would suggest to interrupt for 5 minutes this session and then continue in 5 minutes. Thank you.